Go ahead, Commissioner Fye.
I should go first. Keeping the tradition going, set by Commissioner Willie. No, I'm saying I get volunteered all the time. Sorry, I saw you make. Joking aside, hello everyone. Happy Tuesday. Excited to be here, and I join you to have no big items to report at this meeting. Last week, one of the big discussion that I think sort of alluded to last Tuesday when we had our board meeting was around the tolling project that will be coming forward at JPAC, and that was really a good, robust discussion. And people are still asking delay to further delayment and or to delay that vote, but it's still scheduled to be to have a vote next month. So I'll report back how that item moves forward, whether it gets the votes that it needs to move forward for ODOT to do the next steps in regards to tolling, or if it doesn't pass forward, then we need to go back to the drawing board. So I'll turn it back to the next commissioner that can go up next.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Fye. And Commissioner Fye and I were just together at least my first face-to-face gathering meeting over a luncheon today. So it was wonderful to do that, and reminds me that during this time of using electronic tools, folks still think that you're in front of your computer all day and sending emails and wondering, why haven't you responded yet? Well, let's see. I think I've been in some other meetings, so I got a kick out of that. Anyway, Vice Chair Willie, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I made the venture into Portland this morning as well, alongside of Nafisa and Pam on the PBA briefing, and I'll get to that in just a second. But yes, it's been a while since I've enjoyed the commuter rush. It wasn't too bad this morning, so I guess that was a good thing. Yeah, I attended the GPI board meeting last week. They presented their audit and certainly their budget for 22, and then their pipeline that they track all the new, at least interest in businesses coming into the Portland region. And so it was always good to hear some positive news along those lines. Of course, they still struggle a lot with some of the things that are going on in Portland, and so we always have a robust conversation about that. Talked to Representative Ron Noble last week about gain share, and it's always good to be able to communicate that. So thank you, Aaron, for setting that up, and certainly the messaging that we're doing there. I hope we are successful in that. It looks pretty good. Had the Forest Trust Lands Advisory Committee meeting again. Hampton Lumber made a great presentation about carbon sequestration in the forest, plus a variety of other, I guess, projections and things that are going on, certainly in the conversation of the Forest Management Plan and the Habitat Conservation Plan. So stay tuned. Those things will certainly begin to have more conversation as we move through 2022, and I'll try and keep the board up to speed on that. It's a complex issue for me to get my hands around the greatest permanent value and all those things. So certainly will be reporting back to the commission on that project. And then this morning, as I said, the three of us went to the PBA briefing. And again, that was PBA's kind of opening information about a state of the region, so to speak. It's a lot of polling information and what are the priorities. And I can say that the top three priorities from my standpoint, and I'm sure Pam and Nafisa can weigh in and fill in the blanks on this, but to me, some of my takeaways was their top three was no new taxes. Secondly was we got to deal with homelessness, and their third is crime. And crime has significantly moved up in priority in the polls over the past year, and probably since that statistic was as of December 31st, they were saying it probably would have moved up even further, considering the criminal activity going on in January and February. So lots of good information. I would imagine we might be able to get the PowerPoint. We could reach out to Andrew and see if that would be available, because just we covered a lot of information in basically an hour. So it's good to go back and do a little bit of refresh. So with that, I'll stop there and let Pam and Nafisa weigh in on that. I do have one other thing, just trivia for all of you today. So what is today? Today is February 22nd, 22, right? Okay. Well, in about, what is it, about 14 minutes, it'll be 2:22 on 2/22/22. So there you go. How often does that happen? I don't know. I was going to Google it and say, how often does that something like that happen? But I didn't get around to it. So somebody else can do that. But anyway, that's your trivia fact for the day. And I got nothing else.
I think it's supposed to be a lucky day or something. So manifest away.
Go ahead, Commissioner Rogers.
I'll answer your question, Jerry. Every century that happens. So you calculate whatever centuries you want, and you'll get that. Let's see. What would you like to know? I was down in Nafisa's district, or up, I guess, from my particular area. Last Saturday, gave a opening comments to NAMI. I've been a long time supporter of theirs, and we cut a ribbon on their new facility. For any of you who want to go out and look at it, it's a great facility. So I appreciate what they've done. I'll let the chair talk about our meeting that we had in Tualatin, where we were chatting about a road that we'd made commitments on a long time. Pleasant, but let's just say differences of opinion on what we ought to do. This Friday we have, I guess, the opening, so to speak, of the 217 improvements, and I can reminisce back, and I don't know how many more of you were here about then, but I can remember when 217 was going in. That was a long time ago. So it's nice to see some improvements, and nice to see what's going on. And Jerry, you and I have a misstep briefing on Friday, as I recall, and I think that probably covers it. Oh, I would also say that I attended a meeting that Paul Savas from Bill Kennemer had been invited to attend, and I wasn't a speaker or anything. I simply was a participant listening to them, but they were talking about the tolling, and you all might know that Bill has an idea about voting. I don't think it's legal the way he wants to do it, but that's okay. You can introduce anything into the legislature you want, but he wants those who are along the 205 corridor to have a voice in what happens. And so that's fine. I didn't get a chance to talk to him because, again, I wasn't a panelist, but interesting session. A lot of going on tolling, a lot of different opinions, and a lot of different thoughts. And that's nothing new, but this one's a little more acrimonious, I think. Let's just put it that way. So I'll pass it to either Pam or Nafisa.
I think, Nafisa, I think that you have, you've given your report. Isn't that correct? Okay. So good afternoon to everybody, and happy Tuesday, like everybody said. It's busy time, short week, but lots going on. Last week, I had two community action meetings. One was a thank-a-thon, where board members call donors and say thank you, and it was really a fun thing to do. Actually, there are people who are longtime donors of the organization, and it makes you feel good about the people that are supporting our community needs. I also met with, as Jerry did with Noble, I met with Representative Maxine Dexter and talked about the gain share extension. She was very receptive, listened, and I think that Erin Doyle is, in fact, doing a great job of setting these meetings up and providing us with good talking points, setting the stage, being there. But it's much appreciated, and I think this is what we were looking for in terms of the commission reaching into the legislature more. And I really like the way that we're doing this. So I think it's well orchestrated by our GR staff. I did attend the PBA briefing today. I concur with everything that Commissioner Willie said. I think that the really stark piece for me was the how Portland is lagging behind other MSAs across the country in relationship to some of the business recovery, those pieces. It's hard to know exactly how that is where Washington County is in the picture, because early on in the presentation, they did say that Multnomah County and the city of Portland had different issues than Clackamas or Washington County did. But we're still in that MSA, so we have to take into consideration, I believe, all of that information and make sure that we're reflective of what's going on. I believe everybody from the Multnomah County Commission was there, and so that was strong. There were a lot of Metro elected officials there. Mingus Maps was the only commissioner from the city of Portland there, but the messages were loud and strong. And my big takeaway was exactly what Jerry talked about, was the crime statistic, and to the point where in Portland, in the MSA of Portland, those of us that have lived here a long time, crime has always been a non-issue. It's been, less than a percentage point on the on the reporting, and now it jumped from that to 24 points on the scale, which is very significant. And I think we're all seeing that in relationship to what we see in the newspaper and what we see around us. So the message was clearly about binary choices. It isn't about either supporting with more public funding our public safety or not supporting. It's how do we support everything? How do we support our community involvement in public safety? How do we continue to, and this is in the Portland world, increase, bring in body cams, those types of things, while making sure that the community is involved. And I did appreciate the PBA's approach to all of the issues not being a black and white or a zero-sum game in relationship to choices that we make. They did mention that diversity in the region as a whole in this MSA has gone up dramatically, and that's we see those on our maps that we're getting in Washington County. But it was nice to know that others are seeing it as well. This week for me, I have a Preschool for All meeting, and I will be attending the Highway 217 kickoff that Commissioner Rogers mentioned. And on Wednesday is the Impact meeting, and there'll be a presentation on the values and outcomes for the 2023 Regional Transportation Plan. The project manager is going to provide an update on the scoping process and seek feedback on the draft values and outcomes from the 2023 RTP. There's going to be a presentation on emerging transportation trends study. The initial results are coming from Elliot Rose of Metro, and there'll be a food scraps requirement policy update from Holly Sternkorb and Rosalind Green of Metro. So that's what's on the agenda. If you have comments you'd like to make sure I see them before tomorrow night. And that's my report.
Thank you, commissioners. I'll just add to that last week I had the monthly meeting with the mayors of Washington County. And the first topic that we dove into was solid waste and recycling. So Brian Kennedy, the CFO from Metro, as well as Councilor Garrett Rosenthal, were on hand to walk through the Metro garbage fee illustration that I'd sent you guys about a month ago. Sorry, you commissioners, about a month ago. And then we talked about Ridwell as well. And that pretty much, that whole discussion ate up a whole hour. So that meant that Dorian Russell, who was really great in being on hand to give the mayors an update on ARPA, didn't get a chance to present. So I'm very much appreciative of her being available for that meeting. On Wednesday evening, as Commissioner Rogers referred to, he and I were joined by our awesome Land Use and Transportation and Clean Water Services staff members to review questions and concerns regarding the Basalt Creek Parkway extension. You might recall that a majority of that extension involves a new bridge over the canyon. There are at least three, actually there are at least four, but we only met with three of the city council members are new to the city council since major negotiations and design work had gone on last decade to do some transportation network planning. As Commissioner Rogers highlighted, the four jurisdictions of Washington County, Wilsonville, Tualatin, and Metro had worked out an agreement for the Basalt Creek Parkway as well as 121st as part of a network to improve connectivity in and around Tualatin and the city of Wilsonville. And the 124th investments have already been made, as have other improvements to the Basalt Creek Parkway. So we went over their questions about who had responsibility for deciding to plan and put forward a housing solution, an affordable housing solution that is going in. Answer to that, the city and the city council. They also had other questions and concerns about the design and the environmental next steps moving forward. And this is where I think our staff really did a shining job between Stephen Roberts, our Director of Land Use and Transportation, as well as the Clean Water Services team. I have I have reason for confidence in our team because they really have been delivering much more environmentally sensitive transportation solutions than has been done in prior decades, because we're a learning organization or organizations. So hats off to them. It was, I think, Commissioner Rogers, I think you would agree it was a productive meeting. And hopefully that has helped smooth some relations there, particularly with a much more common understanding, with which I'm sure more to come. So that was followed by an event Thursday morning, a joint event between the Westside Economic Alliance and the Washington County Chamber, a governor's candidate discussion. So they had two of the candidates that are slated for the May ballot. They had Christine Drazen as well as Tina Kotek independently speaking to the group. After the May election, you may know that Betsy Johnson is running as an independent. And so I believe they have plans for after the May ballot to have Betsy Johnson come in as well. I don't know if that was recorded, but that was open to all members. Phew. And let's see, I think that's it for me. Commissioner Fye and I met with Tualatin Valley Creates and RAC in a joint briefing last week, and I'll be participating in the Preschool for All meeting on Friday, as well as various constituent meetings throughout the remainder of this week. So that's it from me in a nutshell. So any other commissioner contributions at this time? Nope. All righty, we'll turn it over to our leadership staff. Ms. Angie.
Good afternoon, Chair Harrington, Board of Directors. I'd like to, Board of Commissioners, excuse me, I was looking at Mark Jockers when I said that. I'd like to start with some good news. The Energy Trust of Oregon recently recognized Washington County with several strategic energy management awards for our ongoing efforts to save energy, improve energy efficiency, and advance sustainability goals. So I do want to extend appreciation to our Board of Commissioners and also our sustainability team, led by our sustainability manager, Robin Strong. Some of the categories that we won awards in is employee engagement, awarded for the most activities in the cohort related to engaging employees and energy savings, most engaged energy team. We earned all the milestones, what does this mean? Washington County completed all 5 program milestones for 2021 and received incentives for each. Milestones achieved include development of an annual energy plan, development of a standard operating procedure, support of an established energy team, energy operations and maintenance, and executive sponsorship engagement in this process. They attended many calls. There was also an award for that, the most attendance at calls. And then additionally, the county received more than 13,000 in additional incentive payments for our energy savings projects, and also intern support, which helped support our work throughout 2021. So this is great news in moving our climate activities forward. So thank you to the board for your support in this work.
And for the team in leveraging grant opportunities to help us be more energy efficient, but also to save our taxpayers money. Yay!
And consistent with board direction, we have released a media release, and we will be posting this information so that our community can also track the activities and achievement. COVID, we do have 4 new cases this week, so that is once again lower than last week. We do have some employees who are still recovering at home, but this is still a very positive trend that we're seeing within our workforce. From community, the latest 7-day rolling average for Washington County shows 222 cases per 100,000 population, which represents a 9% positivity rate. And this represents a 47% decrease in cases since last week. So last week's number was a double-digit decrease as well. So we are seeing that decrease continue.
So we're going in the right direction, but am I correct in understanding the level has to get to like 100 cases per 100,000 in order for us to break that threshold from substantial risk to moderate?
Correct.
Nope, I
No,
don't have it
not-
right.
It's not quite there, and I don't have the numbers in front of me. It looks like County Council Carr is pulling that up as we speak, so I can continue, and he'll jump in during his leadership update, because we were actually just talking about this prior to the call. And while this is good news, we do still have community spread, so it is important to, right, so to adhere to all the safety protocols. I do want to flag for the board's awareness in your inbox. It was delivered late last week, is a memo titled Alternate Shelter Memo. This is a follow-up based on board request at the December roundtable. I would encourage you to take the time to read that memo. It will be a good pre-read prior to our March roundtable, where Commissioner Fye is facilitating a guest speaker at that roundtable discussion. And then I don't have a letter today. However, I am looking for the board thumbs up. Another memo that was sent to the board is a revised town hall. We do have our upcoming town hall in March. This is a revised run of show. Really appreciate the feedback that staff received from the board, because this is a Board of Commissioners town hall. So we want to make sure it fits the wishes of the board. The memo is in your inbox. I'm not going to take the time to review the run of show, but the team is here. Thumbs up, Roy. Okay. Catherine, Commissioner Treese, Willie. Okay, thumbs up from everyone. Okay, thank you. That's helpful because there's a lot of behind the scenes work that our team needs to get busy with. So thank you for your leadership in this space, Latricia and Amanda as well. And that concludes my update.
Great. And one item I forgot to mention, tomorrow morning, the monthly WEA Board of Directors meeting, our own Commissioner Treese, as well as Under Sheriff Cook, John Cook, will be presenting to the WEA Board about the Enhanced Sheriff Patrol District Levy. So, yeah, see you very early in the morning. Mr. Carr, welcome back. We're so glad you had a wonderful vacation.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. And I did have a wonderful, great vacation. And it's nice to be back home. To answer your question, we are still in the high transmission level. The high transmission level is total cases per 100,000 average over the last 7 days of more than 100, or a transmission rate of greater than 10%. As Ms. Angie said, the transmission rate is under 10%, but we're still at over twice the level for high transmission. Substantial transmission is between 50 and 99 cases per 100,000, and moderate transmission is 10 to 49. Low transmission is under 10. So we're a long way from even being in the substantial, although, as you noted, the level is going in the correct direction. Thank you. I have nothing further.
Mr. Jockers, Clean Water Services.
Thank you, Chair Harrington and members of Clean Water Services Board of Directors. Everything is in normal operating mode at Clean Water Services. We're happy to see that the number of positive cases of COVID, like the county, is going down. We had 4 positive cases reported this week. No direct exposures. We have 9 people that are currently out of the office or working at home because of exposure or because of positive cases, but otherwise things are going very well. Thank you very much.
I have a question of you, Mark, and
Yes.
it might be unfair and you may have to get back. It's come out that the CDC has not been exactly too upfront in regard to sewer samples that have been taken across the nation. I think it's about 200 communities who have been submitting information. I know we're one of them because we were a leader in that. The reason of non-disclosure is they said we might draw inaccurate or some kind of assumptions that aren't accurate in regard to COVID. Could you, I don't know if anybody else interested other than me, but could you run that down and see what is being done with all that data we've been submitting? Because I think it's great work. It's really a trend setting. And so I'm a little surprised that this is all coming out about not wanting to share with other agencies this work, not from us, but across the country. Are you familiar at all with what I'm saying, Mark? Probably not.
Yes, I am familiar with the CDC's national collection of data across the country from the sewer surveillance. We are one of the organizations that have been submitting data, although our data is not up on anything yet. We're looking into that with OSU. I don't know about this hesitation about them publishing it or sharing it, but I could certainly look into that. I will tell you that Dr. Layton, who you've met, Blythe Layton, has actually been invited to speak at a Water Environment Federation Public Health and Wastewater Disease Surveillance Conference, is actually what it is, in Cincinnati next month to talk about kind of what the state of the science is on this work related to a surveillance of COVID and other diseases too. So I'll follow up with her, and I can certainly follow up with the board on that question.
And thanks, Mark. I just want to say, please don't disband any effort. I think that is groundbreaking. I think that's wonderful work, and it's certainly good for all communities. It's state of the art, and so you guys need to be really complimented. That's an outstanding job, whether or not others get to see it or not. We know we have it, so yeah. But I appreciate the follow-up.
And Commissioner Rogers, it is data that we have been providing every week to Washington County Public Health as well as to OHA, who've certainly seen value in it as well. So, but I will check into that, follow up with
Thank you, Mr. Jockers. Commissioners or leadership, any last follow-up before we move on? No? Okay.
I do have one, just, and it's kind of a national or international one. My heart goes out deeply to those in Ukraine right now, and I hope that as we do our business here in Oregon or in our own families and neighborhoods, I mean it's small measure compared to what these folks are dealing with over there. So I hope that if there's an opportunity at some point for us just to say that we our hearts are there, our intentions are there. Not much we can do, obviously, other than to keep them in our thoughts, prayers, and it's a serious situation, so it's not good.
Well, and coincidentally, while I was driving to my luncheon, I heard a advertisement on OPB radio for a Ukrainian artist or set of artists who will be performing at the Patricia Research Center for the Arts in April. So yeah, sounds pretty cool. Go ahead, Commissioner Treese. Whoops. Don't worry, we're not going to leave without you.
Thank you for that reminder. Because I was supposed to, and I forgot to do this. So I am going to be attending the Patricia Reeser ribbon cutting next week. So that's during our work session. So I'm going to be gone for a period of time during that work session. So I appreciate the just the reminder that I needed to tell you that. And I also certainly support Commissioner Rogers' sentiments as well. But just know I'll be gone at like 10:30 for probably about an hour.
Yes, thank you for covering that. I chose to not attend because I figured as chair, it was more pertinent, I guess, that I be there to run the meeting. So thank you.
Right, good.
Thank you. So yes, all righty. Well, we'll get down to our other agenda topics then and switch over to our state legislative session update. I know there's a lot going on, so the sooner the better. Here we go.
Yes, they're joining right now, Chair. And just an update on the board meeting agenda for tonight of the added item F1 for the adoption of the Economic Development Work Plan was added to the agenda after publishing.
Oh yes, were there any questions about today's agenda? Nope. Thank you for that reminder, Mr. Carr. I blew right by it again. All right, well, welcome Aaron Doyle and Paige Spence.
Thank you, Chair Harrington, and good afternoon, Board and Commissioners. For the record, I am Paige Spence. I'm one of your government relations managers. Along with my colleague, Aaron Doyle, I'm glad to provide this update. We are over halfway through with the short legislative session, and as of yesterday, the Senate President and the Speaker of the House called sine die imminent, which is sort of the general designation that means session is really moving quickly and things will come to a close. That's not to say sine die is imminent as of tomorrow, but it means that things have really shifted from the policy focus to the budget focus with many bills in Ways and Means, and that we are on 1 hour notice, meaning that there is only 1 hour of notice in advance of legislative hearings. So things are moving pretty quickly, and I have some more certainty on the issues in my portfolio than last week, so I'm glad to share out, and then Aaron will do the same. So if we could go ahead and advance to the next slide, Kevin. And this is where I always forget that I have the second slide that tells your board that we will provide you the legislative updates and then of course review the calendar and timeline. So I just skipped ahead there a little bit. Next slide, please, Kevin. Thank you. And without further ado, let's begin the legislative updates. We can advance the slide one more time. Thanks a lot, Kevin. Okay, so the first slide here is going to focus on health and human services. Behavioral health still being one of the largest topics for session. So under workforce retention, we've got House Bill 4004. This is that bill brought forward by our statewide mental health association to distribute grants to behavioral health providers, including CMHPs like ours, for staff compensation as well as workforce retention and recruitment. The cost estimate here is still fluctuating between anywhere from $65 to about $135 million. This is a cost estimate that the Legislative Fiscal Office that will really crunch the numbers and we'll have more certainty as to what our share here at Washington County would be. That bill is in good shape and scheduled to move out of the Joint Ways and Means Subcommittee tomorrow. And then also under behavioral health, we have House Bill 4098 that I've been working with alongside Brad Anderson from County Council. This is the bill to stand up the body that will allocate the state settlement from the national opioid litigation. And this bill is also scheduled to move out of the Ways and Means Subcommittee tomorrow. Advancing to the second topic under Health and Human Services is public health. And the name of the game here is funding, funding, funding. So we did receive confirmation yesterday that Senator Kate Lieber, who of course is one of our own delegation members and also the Ways and Means Human Services Subcommittee co-chair, she did let us know that she advanced the full $50 million ask for public health response that are for costs that cannot be FEMA reimbursable. And again, about half of that would go to local public health authorities. And so while we don't know what the final Ways and Means package will look like, we do know that our subcommittee co-chairs have put forward our full ask, which is great news. And then additionally in House Bill 4052 under public health, this is the really important equity bill for public health this session. It funds 2 mobile health pilot program services in communities that have had disparate incomes around social determinants of health because of racial equity. And the bill also will stand up affinity groups and task forces to develop recommendations for additional resources to address health needs and health inequities faced by our BIPOC communities. We're getting word that this bill is going to be funded, and then the Oregon Health Authority will be able to develop recommendations and bring them back to the legislature in the future session. And then finally, under Health and Human Services, bird dogging this child care package. It's a bit of a moving target, but as of today, we think that the ask is going to be funded at about half of what the advocates have asked for, which is $100 million. So in House Bill 4005, there is currently a $50 million investment. That's really capacity building grants for child care providers to drive down costs for working families and increase overall child care capacity in the state. And so unless there are any questions under Health and Human Services, we can advance to the next slide, please. Thank you, Kevin. So now we're going to cover addressing housing and homelessness, which in this session bridges our community development department because of emergency rental assistance, and then also, of course, our housing authority. So I want to spend a few minutes focusing on the governor's package. I've mentioned in earlier presentations that the governor, through her housing agency, Oregon Housing and Community Service, has put together really a quite historic and broad housing package for this session that totals over $400 million. But many of stakeholders have found that $500,000 in that $400 million package for homelessness services just wasn't going to be enough. And so last week, I let your board know that a coalition of medium and large sized cities have been lobbying the legislature directly for $50 million for cities to provide homeless services. I am glad to finally be able to report on some details of the package that House leadership has put together that seemingly has buy-in from the Senate as well. So again, this is not set in stone, but here is the rundown of sort of the expectations, which is that the state will provide direct allocations to cities outside of the Portland metro area, or you can think of it outside of the Tri-County area. They'll be funding those cities with populations greater than 75,000 or more directly. And then for the metro area, including Washington County, the legislature is considering a hybrid model where some allocations will go to the 3 metro counties, and there will also be direct allocations to some larger cities. So the numbers are not finalized in writing, but my understanding as of today, and I believe this is consistent with what Ms. Angie has heard from the city of Beaverton as well, is that Hillsborough is going to receive $1 million, Beaverton $750,000, and then Washington County another $750,000. It's important to note that the direct allocations to the cities was very important to the cities of Beaverton and Hillsborough. And I know that, again, as I just referenced, that Beaverton's administration has spoken with Ms. Angie to that effect. The cities, not only our cities, but our 2 cities, Beaverton and Hillsborough, really have been stepping up at the state level to offer collaboration with counties on homelessness response. And so they really do see this funding as a city's ask. So it's a win-win and a meaningful funding source for the state to truly partner as local governments and work towards bettering options and quality of life for our homeless neighbors. Since these numbers are tentative and we're operating on roughly 90% certainty around our expectations rather than having 100% certainty and seeing language in writing, government relations is not proposing to have a policy conversation with your board today as to the best uses of our direct allocation or the allowable uses of the funds. While broad and designed to be flexible, the legislature is placing certain sideboards on how the dollars can be used. And so between today and our next week's government relations presentation, my plan is to coordinate with county administration and housing services to provide you with updated information and to inform your board's decision-making around getting these dollars onto the street in an equitable and efficient manner. And Chair Harrington, I see you have your hand
We
up.
will need to have discussion on this. We can either do it now or a little bit later, but it is definitely on the radar of a few of us elected. So it does need to be up-leveled from just staff and administration, as you've highlighted.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. Would your board like to have that conversation now? Oh, sorry, I see Miss Angie that you went off mic. You may have a process in mind for this.
Well, no, I just wanted to provide one bit of clarification. It's also Hillsborough that is advocating also for the direct allocation in addition to Beaverton. These are very important components to both cities. So I just want to provide that clarification.
So board, do you want to talk about this now or come back to it at the end?
Let's do it now.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, so at least Commissioner Willie and I have been the recipient of phone calls from, or at least for me, Mayors Beatty and Callaway, and I asked Mayor Callaway to talk to Commissioner Willie as well, which I assume he has done. This request really was driven a lot, I would say, from what I understand from the cities. They have a plan that they've outlined, and in that plan, they've enumerated exactly what they want to do and what they need to do. I am not privy to why the state legislature wants to take what has been a city ask, at least for the cities here in Washington County, and redirect some of that to us as Washington County. We have great partners with the cities. Just to remind ourselves, with the homeless encampment program, both Beaverton, at least Hillsborough and Forest Grove have been really good partners in that program, as well as with our work together on the supportive housing services and affordable housing throughout our community. So I think we have reason to believe, to put faith in their doing that work. And given that they have outlined their shorter term needs for this, I think we really need to be active in securing dollars on their behalf through the legislature, and specifically make sure that if the legislature is directing money to Washington County, that we then in turn direct that right to those two cities as they have planned out. I originally, as I've been informed, the city of Beaverton asked for 2.9 million and the city of Hillsborough 3.4 million. So it's a little disappointing that the funding level has been stepped down significantly, which makes them that much more hungry for as many dollars as they're able to get, because after all, they did plan this out for exactly how they can make headway in the short term. And one of the things that I was informed was a common thread between the effort from the city of Portland, Gresham, Beaverton, and Hillsborough is trying to ensure that homelessness needs are met as they've been experienced along the MAX line. So anyway, that's the broad overview of what I've received. And the outcome I'm looking for is that we support the asks from the city of Beaverton and the city of Hillsborough, and have our government relations team work to help ensure that these dollars go to them and as many dollars as possible. Commissioner Willie, is there something perhaps that I have missed through all of this or that you could add?
No, that's a great recap. Same information I got today, and I think probably that at least from Mayor Callaway's standpoint, if we would be open to the allocation of that $2.5 million between Hillsborough and Beaverton, he's perfectly fine with that being on a population basis versus, you know, the difference in what they asked for, the 3.4 and 2.9. So as to not get into the math of it, to just basically allocate it based on the population of the two cities, and they'd be both very pleased that we would be willing to do that.
So commissioners, the question here is, would you like us as a commission to provide direction to our staff to try and ensure that as many dollars as possible get allocated for this need, and that they work cooperatively with their peers, with the city of Beaverton and the city of Hillsborough to help reach this goal?
I'm fine with what you've just said. I'm just curious. Were other cities also having asked? Were there, for instance, Forest Grove, Tiger, Tualatin? I'm picking the bigger other cities, obviously. And are they going to make some comment that they thought there was some package that would be administered countywide? I'm asking out of ignorance. I really don't know how all this came together.
Commissioner Rogers, Chair Harrington, thank you for that question. Commissioner Rogers, no, my understanding is that those smaller cities were not involved in making this ask. Initially, this started as a statewide ask from cities over a certain population size. I believe the top 8 cities, with Medford being the smallest. And that was the original ask from the cities. Of course, the legislature has made some policy choices. And so in addition to, as Chair Harrington mentioned, the dollar amount being less, I believe it's about a total of 25 million rather than 50 being spread around to local governments. There's also direct dollars going to Clackamas County, even though, for example, they do not have a city over that population size. So the advocacy, sort of the input, came from the larger cities, which for us would, my understanding again, are just Beaverton and Hillsborough. And then the legislature has determined that spreading around the money with a slightly different formula to include counties in the metro area because of the high needs here would be appropriate.
So in summary, this was really driven by the cities, those larger cities, and they're asking us to help support their efforts in order to continue to make gains in the serious problem that we have throughout our communities. So I hear
Exactly.
Commissioner Rogers is in support as well. Commissioner Fye and Treese? Okay. Are you all set with that direction?
Yes, thank you,
Okay.
Chair. I have what I need. Yes, thank you very
Okay.
much and appreciate the discussion. I will be sure to let our city government relations colleagues know that it is our intent to take the dollars allocated directly to us and divide them among just those 2 cities. So that's great.
And
Thank
see
you.
what more we can get.
Also, yes, also. And should we get more information as to the final numbers in this package between now and next Tuesday, I'll of course let your board know.
Just keep going. You're doing great work.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Well, great. And let me please hit on a few other of the funding items under housing and homelessness. So next we have a Project Turnkey 2.0. Again, there was a $50 million ask here that would fund 10 projects. To be quite frank, this is the item that I have the least information about in terms of what is likely to pass, but I'm chatting with Representative Campos tomorrow, who is in, of course, our delegation and is working with House leadership on the housing packages. So I'll be having a conversation with her along with our Assistant Director, Josh Price, to try to get some more information there. And then with rental assistance, there's a total of $90 million on the table for homelessness and homelessness prevention, which those dollars will largely throw the statewide community action agencies. And about 15 million of that 90 million is earmarked for another round of emergency rental assistance dollars for all the reasons we've discussed before. And then 211, again, the ask there is to fund the 211 info line for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with $1 million through the rest of this calendar year. And that also seems to be in good shape to be included in the omnibus budget bill. Turning towards affordable housing preservation, again, this is Chair Harrington.
But it only goes to the end of the year, not to the remainder of the fiscal year? Ooh,
No, you're right. I have that wrong. Thank you. Fiscal year, not calendar year.
okay.
Yes, thank you for clarifying.
But that leaves us with the opportunity of the long session to try and make sure it's in place before we go through more ice storms and heat waves and all that jazz. Okay, thank you, Paige.
That's right. Yes, thank you for keeping me honest. Okay, so the bill numbers we have under preserving affordable housing. The first is Senate Bill 1557. This is that shallow rent subsidy pilot program designed to assist the tenants at Woodspring and Tigard, as well as a community in Salem. That bill is stuck in the Joint Committee on Ways and Means. We have not had any luck getting that referred to a subcommittee and getting a hearing, but having conversations just this afternoon to try to see if we can get that fund stuck. And same situation with House Bill 4043, which creates an income tax credit for folks who are willing to sell their rental units, their buildings to nonprofits and housing authorities for affordable housing. So again, those are two of the bills on our list for Josh and I to talk to Rep. Campos about tomorrow and try to be strategic about getting them out of Ways and Means. And then finally, preparing communities. This is that weather event resiliency pair of bills we've talked about. There's two bills, one requiring landlords to allow cooling like window units, and then another program for the Oregon Health Authority to be able to deploy emergency cooling devices to folks who are eligible for medical assistance during heat events. So these two bills are being consolidated into one. This should be good for everyone, from Dave's to our housing authority to our facility community. So that's a good bill for everyone and on track to pass as well. And then finally, if we could advance the slide just one more time, Kevin, for my presentation, thank you. I am becoming more adept and more comfortable with the general government portfolio that I picked up in the last couple of weeks. So we'll finish there. House Bill 4140, your board voted to oppose this bill as written. This is the bill that pertains to the Ethics Commission and public meeting laws. That bill is not going to be moving forward this session. So that's good to know. And then House Bill 4147, restoring voting rights for incarcerated felons. This bill is in the House Rules Committee, which does not have any deadline, so it's technically still alive, but it hasn't even gotten a public hearing this session. So my expectation is that that bill is also not going to move forward this session. But of course, should that change, I will let you know. And then finally, Senate Bill 1514. This bill is supported by our HR Director, Eva Labonte, and comes with the acknowledgement of the impacts that COVID-19 has had on workforce shortages, both in the public and private sectors. And so this bill would allow for hiring and retention bonuses without running afoul of the state's pay equity laws. So we are in pretty good shape, just trying to get a couple things to move out of Ways and Means. But otherwise, unless there are any questions, I appreciate the board's discussion, particularly on homelessness, and I will ask Kevin to advance to the next slide and turn the conversation over to my colleague, Erin Doyle.
Thank you, Paige, and good afternoon, board. Erin Doyle, Government Relations Manager. I'll start with the Public Safety and Justice. This slide gets increasingly smaller as the session moves forward, as we take bills off that aren't moving forward. And so Senate Bill 1510 and Senate Bill 1511 are both ended up down in Ways and Means. As Paige noted, we are really in the thick of what is coming out of the Ways and Means process. I did a quick search today, and 91 out of the 260 bills that were introduced this year are down in Ways and Means, which means they could potentially try to fund everything, but it seems unlikely. So a lot of bills still yet to track. With this most recent chamber deadline, we still have about 170 live bills for this session, just to give you a context that not everything died as quickly as we thought it would. But so as to the public safety update, the Omnibus Public Safety Reform Package, or Senate Bill 1510, has a work session scheduled in the Ways and Means Public Safety Subcommittee for tomorrow. Just for a reminder from the updates that provided you. The bill does contain modifications to some police procedures, provides for requirements for training for parole and probation officers, and a review and setting of policies for corrections, Department of Corrections. Additionally, this bill, as it's been amended, provides $10 million in funds for distribution to culturally specific organizations and culturally responsive service providers for justice reinvestment efforts. That $10 million is coming from general funds, which is what we've been working to protect our JRA allocations. That remains in place. There have been no amendments posted for tomorrow's hearing. As Paige noted, we are on 1 hour notice, so they could show up 1 hour before the meeting. But my assumption is that we'll pass through with the $10 million coming out of the general fund and then move through the rest of the Ways and Means process tomorrow. Senate Bill 1511 is the bill that we continue to oppose as written. It's the one that included a policy related to the retroactive retrial for non-unanimous jury verdicts for a specific set of cases that came with the fiscal impact that the state had noted and therefore ended up down in Ways and Means, just like everything else did. In addition to that Ramos retroactive conversation, this also included a temporary fix to the lack of clarity that some people believe there is about our ability to recover discovery fees related to criminal cases. But Senate Bill 1511 has not been scheduled has not been sent down to a subcommittee, which means that it is looking less and less likely that will pass. So the effort now is being undertaken from counties across the state to have that discovery fee fix placed into the one of the general budget bills to make sure that the funding is there, regardless of the mechanism, to make sure that counties are kept whole as we then have a longer term conversation around how we do discovery, how we support our DA offices out of not just county budgets to provide for sufficient storage and capability within the administration of evidence, and then the discovery process that criminal matters require. So the hope there is that that solution will find its way into a more general omnibus budget bill instead of moving forward in 1511, as it seems that 1511 is less likely to move forward given that it's not in a subcommittee already. If there are no questions on those bills, I will move us forward to the next slide. Thank you. So economic development, we have lots of good news here. Very exciting to not always just be concerned about price tags and things. So the gain share extension bill 1524 remains unamended and still in Senate Finance and Revenue, not because of anything related to gain share, I'm happy to say. There is now a -17, which given that last Wednesday there was a -13, tells you how many amendments we've gone through. That does still include the extension of gain share for 6 years, is expected to be passed out tomorrow. It should have all of the final technical changes that it needs and supporting paperwork. This means, given that we have very few days left in session, we have to get it through the Senate Finance and Revenue Committee onto the Senate floor, put in that stack of bills, sent over to the House side where it will go to the Revenue Committee, and then hopefully very quickly passed out intact. This is an omnibus tax bill, so there's a lot in there, and tinkering with it a little bit creates a bigger delay. So now the efforts that we're making, and I appreciate the willingness of all of you to participate in this process, and I've been strategically tapping folks based on certain meetings where district related conversations can take place. So I appreciate the assistance we've gotten from everyone. The goal here is to have it unamended on the House side and to move quickly through that process, given just the shortness of time that we have left in session. So making those asks from our delegation up to House leadership to make sure that gain share remains intact within that bill. So we're working on it. Our coalition partners are working hard alongside of us. And hopefully we'll see movement finally at the end of this week, and then quick movement through the Senate as they have to read every single bill. If you ever need something to nap to, just replay this floor session to listen to a nice robot lady read a bill at a little bit faster than regular speed. The other two bills on this slide are also down in down in the Ways and Means process, but also scheduled for subcommittee hearings, which means they are getting funding. So the workforce investment package, this is the governor's really robust, about just over $170 million in workforce development work, is currently scheduled for a subcommittee hearing in the Education, Ways and Means Subcommittee tomorrow. There is no amendment pending there, so it looks like all $170 million will be moving forward, which is great news because that's going to provide a number of our county partners who do this workforce redevelopment work and support those folks who are going through workforce redevelopment programs, sufficient funding to really make a serious investment in those jobs that we're really seeing a shortage of available workers, and an investment in those folks who can take on these really living wage jobs with longer term success. Senate Bill 1579 is down in the Transportation and Economic Development Ways and Means Subcommittee. It is also scheduled for a hearing tomorrow. However, this bill originally called for a $50 million investment in grants for economic stability and equity programs focused on disadvantaged communities and families. There is a pending amendment, which we think will be adopted, which will reduce that $50 million down to $15 million. And while $50 million would be a much better investment, anything that starts this program as a regular opportunity that Business Oregon puts forward to help these culturally specific and culturally sensitive organizations help these populations is a good step forward. We'll just have to come back in the long session and make sure that there's continuing funding, because this is one-time funding of $15 million that will likely pass out of committee tomorrow. Not mentioned on the slide because we don't always remember everything, and we learn about things, yesterday. There is still a total amount of economic development relief related to COVID relief for small businesses, cultural centers, performing arts centers. All of that package is still under conversation in a very tight room. Our fairgrounds perhaps might also be considered as part of all of this ongoing conversation. We are trying to stay attuned to that. We imagine it will be stuffed into one of those larger overall omnibus budget packages that we like to call the Christmas tree bill because it sounds more festive that way. So we're still waiting to see what that total package comes to be, but hopefully will provide sufficient additional resources into our communities to really support those small businesses and those really event centers that have been really struck down by the COVID impacts that continue to live in our community. So if there's no economic development questions, I will move on to the final policy slide. So this slide got real short too. One bill left that I have been working on with LUT and Clean Water Services is the modification of the substantial completion bill. This bill, as originally addressed, we saw potential massive impacts both to our land use and transportation programs and to clean water services programs when it comes to new subdivisions. We heavily negotiated with a lot of technical expertise coming from both agencies through me. I appreciate the amount of time folks had to take away from performing their day-to-day functions in order to provide me with the best advice. We got a bill down to a place where we could live with it and became neutral. But the bill also called for a study of the timing it takes to get through the process from land use approval all the way through final development, and to study the trends in that timing, figure out ways that might be useful for learning best practices to cut down on that timing and all of those sorts of things. And because of the cost of that study, it ended up down in Ways and Means. It has not been sent to a subcommittee, so it is really we are really unsure if that study will end up getting funded, if the bill will continue to move forward. It is, again, as I've probably said ad nauseum at this point in time, if it isn't in a subcommittee, is the outlook for the bill itself is rapidly diminishing. Capital construction will be the final resting place of any bill that isn't probably put out onto a subcommittee agenda by the end of this week. But they are clearly trying to finish up exactly what the size of the package of dollars that are going to go out by sometime early next week, and then start moving all of the bills that have to move forward and finalizing that large final package that Paige and I will hopefully have enough information about next week when we're before your board for our next update. With that information, are there any questions related to any of the bills that we've mentioned, the overall budget process? I see Commissioner Willie's hand up. And
Yeah, Aaron, I apologize. I should have gotten this question to you before today. I'm following House Bill 4002, the Ag Overtime Bill, and then the House Bill 4092 on broadband. I don't expect you to know this off the top of your head, so you can get back to me if you would, please, on those two bills.
well, on House Bill 4002, the Agricultural Overtime Bill, that bill is scheduled to move out of the Revenue Committee that it's currently sitting in, with the expectation it is going to a joint committee that is going to be seated with both House and Senate members. My understanding of the politics of this particular bill is that it is very fraught within the legislature. And so they are looking to see if they can't find a path forward in this session. I don't know more details than that. It's not a policy that I have been tracking closely as far as the policy details, but I will say it is going to be sitting in a joint committee, which means if some sort of negotiated agreement can be made within those memberships, within that committee's membership, it can move out and move forward, or it could become a party line vote at the end of the session because a joint committee would not be subject to the same deadlines as other policy committees. So that's the political situation with that bill. On 4092, that bill is down in Ways and Means, and I apologize for not having included it in the economic development slide because this is an investment and a reorganization of the broadband office at Business Oregon. So House Bill 4092 creates pretty systemic changes to how that office is going to be structured, with the intention of that to make Oregon more ready for getting dollars down from the federal government to invest in broadband. That bill is in Ways and Means right now because there is a fiscal component to the changes that are being made. And it has been assigned to a subcommittee, the General Government Subcommittee of Ways and Means, and scheduled for, it has not yet been scheduled for a work session in that committee, but I imagine it will be soon because once it's been assigned to a subcommittee, it is because it is intended to move it forward. So there will be movement on that bill and sufficient. I think it's probably just figuring out the right level of funding moving forward to make sure it goes through the rest of the process. So while not totally prepared, somewhat prepared to answer your question.
No, that's great. Thank you very much. That was definitely, off the cuff. So I certainly appreciate that. And I'd like to follow up a little bit more conversation on 4002, just because I met with the Farm Bureau last night, and they are obviously advocating against this bill and would like to know where the county is going to weigh in on this if we are. And so let's have more conversation about that.
So at this point, Chair Harrington, I'll let you go ahead.
Happy to. I think this falls in the same category as the bill we talked about last week, where yes, this is a topic that the legislature is undertaking. And we are following the principle that for the short session, as it does not directly affect the agency, we are staying neutral on it and, pretty much standing on the sidelines as the various interests throughout not only Washington County, but the state work on the particulars of it. I think I accurately summarized the principles that we've adopted and continue to put into action.
So from there, that is how I have approached it based on the guiding principles that this board has provided to your GR team moving forward. So if there's no further conversation that's going to be had on that bill, I would move us to the next slide. So this is just a quick reminder, setting some timelines and moving forward. So next slide. We're not setting some timelines, reminding us of some timelines. So last Friday was the date by which policy committees had to post bills that were in the second chamber for work session, which is supposed to have always killed off some bills as, in the parlance of a lobbyist. It didn't strike down many, as many bills just ended up down in Ways and Means or in the Rules or the Revenue Committees, which stay open, as do joint committees, through the remainder of session. I know that most joint committees are working really hard to push out the last of the bills that they have. The revenue committees are also working to finalize what they're going through. And as has been stated multiple times, Ways and Means is finalizing that list of bills that will be coming out of Ways and Means. Tomorrow is that second chamber deadline to have actually held the work session on straight policy bills. So if it doesn't get a second work session on the other chamber, it also will not be moving forward the session. So from there, you can see we have a limited number of green squares in which we have to get the legislative work done. So really, it's about just a week and a half, or 2 weeks from today. I can totally do calendar math to finalize the session. With Sunny Day being declared imminent, it could be anywhere from a week to all the way down to the 7th, which is the constitutional sine die, 35th day. We are at that point when we start wondering how many of those days we're going to be using, but given the fact that we are reading bills on the floor, the amount of time it takes to finish the process will very much be about the finalized negotiations at the legislative level of can we agree to the following package and just stop reading bills. Thank you. So we'll see what happens there. Chair Harrington.
So I was just curious because I can't remember when it gets to the point where there is all the policy bills have passed, but the budgetary aspects through Ways and Means still have to be completed. Will that omnibus bill or whatever form it takes, will that still have to be read out loud?
It depends upon if they can reach an agreement, a negotiated agreement to waive the reading of the bill. It has been a pro forma in many sessions past to just we're talking decades of pro forma to waive the third reading. That has not been accomplished this session. It is a conversation the legislature has to have. So if there is an overall agreement to the final bills moving forward, oftentimes that big omnibus bill will in fact be that reading would be waived, but it is a vote of the legislature that to whether or not to do that, and they can't just do it with a majority vote. So that is the procedure that they'll have to follow. Hopefully we won't have to listen to a 125-page bill read at 1.2 speed for 4 days running. But yeah, even the budget bill would have to be read if that is not agreed to.
Okay.
Yeah. So I imagine some weekends where bill reading occurs on the floor will start moving forward, provided quorums appear those days. So from that, I'll move to the last slide, which is a reminder of what your GR team's check-in will be. So we're here today. We'll be here next Tuesday to do our final update about the legislative session. Doubtful will be actually done. And then on the 15th, we'll provide a much more robust and complete summary of the session and what exactly all happened in the last few days and what exactly all got funded so that we can move forward and start planning from there. After that, we will hopefully have created a new slide with a longer term timeline where we'll start looking at next session's goals, priorities, and the work that your GR team will be doing, not just at the state level, but at the federal level and any other major GR projects we undertake starting in April, because that is when we start next year's conversations for policy work. With that, Paige or I are still available to answer any questions. We will have our weekly memo on Fridays, and you'll see us back here next Tuesday. And we thank you for your time.
Any last comments or questions or comments, commissioners? Go ahead, Commissioner Willie.
This is going to just show my naivety on this whole thing. So the reading of the bill in full that you just said, Aaron's going to take 4+ hours or something. I don't understand why they didn't change that rule this year. I understand why it was invoked in prior sessions, but this one here would seem to me like wouldn't. Anyway, so can you have those pre-recorded and just kind of hit the recorder? And because does everybody have to stay in session? So they have to stay in the room during this whole period of time, or do they get to wander off and have other meetings while somebody just recites whatever it is? I mean, I don't even see a purpose to this. So explain this to me a little bit.
So it is a constitutional requirement that the third reading be read in full, but it is waivable under the rules that the legislature undertakes. There are also fun procedural rules about whether or not you can be off the floor while the bills are being read, but at this point in time, they are using a computer-assisted reader who sounds a lot like Siri, who reads the bills. That's slightly faster than what you or I could do it, because the clerks have done in past years tried to read these bills, and the amount of exhaustion and vocal strain that was undertaken really was trying for an actual human being. So right now, as bills are being read, unless there is a call to the floor, members are doing other things, but mostly kind of stuck to the floor because you can't exactly tell. But they do put a timer on it of how long it's going to get through the bill estimated. And so then members are doing other work. They are doing phone calls. They are stepping off the floor. If you are there on the House side, on the Senate side, they are pretty much stuck on the floor. It is, there are reasons why you choose not to basically waive this requirement, that are political conversations about how long they would like to protract a session, because that really reduces the number of bills that can move through, to be honest.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Well, seeing no other comments or questions, I really want to compliment the two of you for representing us through the short session thus far, and I have every confidence in the remaining time as well, particularly making sure that we utilize your services for highest and best use versus just, some performative stance on things that frankly are the wheeling and dealing of the legislative process and the committees. So job well done to you. Good expertise. Thank you. And keep up the good work. I know you're in the 2-week sprint. Keep going. We'll see you next week. All right, folks. Well, we have just one item left on our agenda for today before we have our meeting this evening at 6:30. The next item is an executive session. So let's see, would you like to take a 10 or 15-minute break before we convene our executive session? 15? Yes, okay. So we'll do that. And at 3:35, we will reconvene in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660 sub 2 sub I to consider performance evaluations. Do we have a motion to enter into executive session? We have a motion from Commissioner Rogers and a second from Commissioner Treese. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, commissioners. Anyone opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. We will see you on the Zoom link that is in our calendars. All righty. See y'all a little bit later.